When taking the PMI-RMP exam, you're going to see a lot of questions that are pretty confusing and some that you almost think don't belong on the exam. That's what makes the PMI-RMP exam so challenging. It doesn't just test what you know, it tests how you think about risk across project, portfolios, programs, the whole 9 yards. And today, we're wrapping up my full deep dive into PMI-RMP exam content outline. We're going to finish it up with something special. We're going to look at some practice questions because that's how you take everything that we've talked about and you put it into probably what matters the most, what the questions on the exam are going to look like. We're going to move across an easy, moderate, complicated question. And my last one is going to be a sneaky one that catches a lot of people off whenever they actually take the exam because like questions you see on the exam, it doesn't always have to actually mention the word risk. And I'm going to show you how that can be, and it's still aligned to the PMI RMP exam content outline. So if you've watched the previous videos in this series, you already know the 5 domains: risk strategy and planning, risk identification, risk analysis, risk response, and monitor and control risks. But this final video is where it all connects. We're going to walk through again 3 sample questions, and I'm going to show you how PMI hides the domains right inside those scenario based questions. Okay, so here's the first one. Easy question. Start with the last sentence when you're reading these questions. What should the risk manager do next? Here we know, what are we doing next? All right. Sounds simple, but like you want to know that while you're reading the question. So during a brainstorming session, the project team identifies several potential threats and opportunities for an upcoming system rollout. After the meeting, the risk manager reviews the notes and notices that some risks are duplicates, while others are missing key details such as triggers and impacts. All right, so now we want to look at what does the risk manager need to do next in this scenario. So obviously they're in a brainstorming session. So that right off the bat tells us that we're most likely in some form of identification of our risk scenario, which it talks about the team has identified several potential threats and opportunities. So we know that that is the point in this process that we are at is in risk identification. But now we're after the meeting. So now us as the risk managers, we're reviewing the notes and we're looking at this and we see, okay, there are some duplicates to our risks. So even though there's duplicates, we're missing key details as the triggers and impacts for some of these. So now you're like, okay, what do I actually have to do next? We're going to enter into the risk register to maintain a complete record. Okay, something we could probably do. Now we're really not involving the team with this though, but it's a decent idea. Reconvene the team to clarify and document each risk trigger, cause, and potential impact. I'm liking this one because, again, you as the risk manager, you don't have to do it all yourself. You want to get the team's input. They're the subject matter experts. So this is a great idea to get the team back together. So I'm liking B. C, escalate the incomplete risk information to the project sponsor for guidance. All right. I'm going to tell you right now on the exam, the exam is not testing your ability to really escalate unless it's like a straight escalation situation. But this right here is something you can handle at your level. If you can handle it at your level, you need to take care of it at your level. So a lot of times when you see these escalates to the sponsor, you can almost rule them out very quickly. And you'll see a lot of those on the exam. So I just want to say 9 out of 10 times that is not going to be the answer, but don't take it away that it won't ever be the answer. All right. So C, I'm not liking. Obviously, you can tell. And D, remove all unclear risks from the list to avoid confusion. Definitely don't like that one because we shouldn't just be removing anything. Again, we're not subject matter expert. We need to pull those SMEs in to help them make the right decision and inform us, guide us, and actually put us on the right path with these risks. So I already, C and D, I'm already knocking them out. So it's down between A and B right now. A, enter all risks into the risk register and maintain a complete record, or reconvene. Between A and B, again, A is, to me, it's just you are not validating this information. Like you need the SMEs, you need those people to come in and actually give you these triggers and these impacts that you're missing. So I'm going to roll with B. I don't know what your thoughts are. Let's see if I am correct here. And it is B. Awesome. So, B, you want to make sure that you are documenting risk triggers and thresholds based on the context and the environment. And you need to bring in those subject matter experts, ensure accuracy, shared understanding, and getting that reliable input so that way later you can take it through qualitative and quantitative analysis. And we're pulling that question out of risk identification. Task 3, document risk triggers and thresholds based on context environment. All right. So you saw how I just went through that question. For you, that's how I want you to take every practice question, practice exam you do. Especially if you're not timed, you need to take your time and dissect the questions. Do that up front. And as you move along, it will get quicker. Trust me. I did this when I studied for my PMP, my ACP, and my RMP. And it sucked at first, but over time, I got faster, I got better, and it was easier to answer questions quickly because I already had this process in my head of dissecting the questions. So, on that, let's go into the next question. All right, question 2. What should the risk manager do first? So, what are we doing first? Obviously, whatever they give us is what's happening after we make that decision. Before recommending any action, a project manager is reviewing the results of a Monte Carlo simulation that has shown a 70% probability of completing the project within the approved schedule. The project sponsor asks whether additional resources should be added to increase the confidence in the delivery date. All right. So, here we got a situation. We've already done a Monte Carlo simulation. Monte Carlo, if you remember from what we've talked about, is a quantitative risk analysis process. So here we see that we have a 70% probability of completing the project within the approved schedule. Our sponsor asks whether additional resources should be added to increase the confidence in the delivery date. So obviously what we see here, we have a sponsor whose risk threshold 70% is not it. They need to be at like an 80 or 85%. So now we have to take that back and we have to develop how do we actually fix this situation? So it's asking us, what should we do first before recommending any action to that sponsor? So first, we rerun the simulation with new resources, new resource assumptions to confirm the potential schedule improvements. Okay, this one, not too bad. We can say like that's not a bad idea that we want to rerun it with some resources, but I don't like that word assumptions. New resource assumptions. Not liking that word. B, escalate the decision to the portfolio manager for approval. We already talked about this. Don't escalate. Recommend adding contingency buffers to all activities. Here now we're just pushing the easy button. We're saying just throw some more money at it. You'll be all right. We're not addressing that stakeholder, our sponsors, actual like what they're worried about. That 70% probability of completing the project. They want that to be an 80 or 85. So that is the problem we need to address. Throwing money at it is probably not going to make them feel any better, may even stress them out more if they can even get the money for this. And D, analyze which risks have the highest impact on the project schedule uncertainty. So it seems here we are going back and we're going to almost, back to that qualitative. We're looking at what were the risks that actually impact this data to show us the 70% probability. So if you ask me right now, it's between A and D for me. I'm interested on what you think. A or D? What are your thoughts? Throw it down in the comments. All right. Let's check out the answer. Our answer is D. Analyze which risks have the highest impact on the project schedule uncertainty. Now you might be asking, Russ, why is it not A? Well, A, running the new simulation, it's going to be good. It's going to get, it's a good idea, but we don't actually know what variables are driving this uncertainty right now. So we need to understand the sensitivity drivers behind what we're actually doing. Because if we just start throwing new resources in there, that's great, but it might not actually be the root of the problem that's causing the 70% probability. Now, for our answer, though, here we're looking at domain 3, risk analysis, perform sensitivity analysis. All right. We're identifying those key schedule drivers that allowed for the targeted risk response planning and more efficient use of our additional resources. So hopefully you got to see that there. Hopefully you got that right. If not, you know, again, let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on that question. And now we're going to move into the fun one. Question number 3 that I have for you all today. What should the project leader have done earlier to prevent this communication breakdown? All right. So what are we doing earlier? There's a communication breakdown. Let's get into this question. It's gonna be interesting. A project update meeting turned tense. We've all been in those update meetings that have just turned tense. We don't like it. When a senior executive interrupted the technical team's presentation, saying the information was too detailed and confusing. Later that day, the project coordinator received feedback from several frontline engineers who felt the leadership didn't understand the real project challenges. So again, what should we have done earlier? So first up, we have A, prepared separate communication materials customized for different stakeholder groups. Sounds like a good idea to me, right? We should have done all that work to understand what each stakeholder needs. So obviously, this per individual was like, I don't need all these details. I need the high level picture. He wasn't getting that. He was not very happy and he interrupted your meeting. So A is looking pretty good in my eyes right now. B, invited fewer people to the meeting to limit conflicting opinions. All right. Avoids the issue, doesn't actually do anything to help us out right now. Although, I'm sure we've all, chopped off that invite list a couple of times, but that's not, remember, the PMI or PMI-RMP is not addressing how you do things in real life. We're looking at the actual persona of a perfect project. You're not going to just drop people off the list. Scheduled a one-on-one coaching session to improve presentation skills. All right, focuses on individual skills, not really working on the communication problem with our stakeholder. And D, ask the executives to read the project documents before attending. Again, something I think we all love for people to do. We sent out the information with the meeting up front, let everyone know what was going to happen. No one reads anything before the meeting. We all know that happens. This right here, though, we're blaming our stakeholders, not something we do on the exam. So obviously, I've already had problems with B, C, and D. So I am going with number A. Let me know if that's your thoughts, because that's definitely my thought right now. I wrote the question, so I might be a little biased. Obviously, the answer was A. And this has to go down to domain 1, risk strategy and planning, task 6, tailor risk communication for stakeholders. Now, what's the fun part about this question? Not once do you actually really see the word risk in it, right? But here we have the risk of miscommunication. That is what you're being tested on. Did you get the right information within your stakeholder analysis to prepare separate communication materials customized to those different stakeholder groups? So, that question right there is a perfect example of what I hear a lot of people say, and even I had when I took the exam, is that when you take the RMP, there's going to be questions that don't say the word risk. That you're like, how is this even on the exam? But you don't have to look for the word risk. You're thinking about risk thinking. How are you applying the exam content outline, the information as a risk manager to apply it to the situation that you've been given? If you can read this scenario, identify what domain it belongs to, link it back to the right task or enabler, you're already starting to think like a true RMP that is going to pass the exam. And it separates people who try to memorize the facts, the data, by memorizing the guide and what PMI actually wants you to understand as the mindset of a PMI RMP. Now, if you want to keep building with questions like this, then I personally want to invite you to my PMI RMP exam prep course. It is starting in 1 month from when this video came out, and I'm going to run them every few months in 2026. I'm going to leave a link down in the description that gives you a list of all my upcoming RMP courses. It's 30 hours, live, virtual, instructor led with me, where I walk you through all the material given by PMI plus a little extra, and it gives you a full breakdown of every domain, every process, and every type of question you'll see, just like we did today. I don't like to just talk theory all the time. I'd like to talk practice. How are you actually going to do this when you sit for your exam? You learn, you decode how the ECO builds into risk framework, and it helps you find the details and what you need to actually pass the exam. Remember my motto: proactive over reactive. It's not just branding, it's how you pass the exam, it's how you lead your projects after the exam. So I've got to ask you, if this series helped you, do me a favor, give me a thumbs up, drop a comment, subscribe to my channel. Tell me which domain challenged you the most, or let me know how many of these questions you got right before I presented the correct answer. Be honest. All right. If you have any more questions, or if you're like, hey, what are you talking about this series on domains? Check out this video here on domain 1 and watch it all the way through domain 5 to domain 5, where you'll get a full analysis from me on what these domains actually look like. All right. I'm Russ Parker, the Bearded PM, out.